there was discussion between the Panthers and the Browns during the draft about a trade that would have sent Mayfield to Carolina. It fell apart because the gap was too large in what the Browns were willing to pay as part of Mayfield's $18.8 million fully guaranteed salary for this year and what the Panthers wanted to pay. And the Charlotte Observer recently reported that the Panthers wanted the Browns to pick up 13 to 14 million of that 18.8, which is a lot. But you know what? They're going to pay it all if they don't trade him. So it fell apart. The Panthers drafted Matt Corral, and here we are. Jeff Howe of The Athletic, I think it was, recently reported it's a holding pattern. Possible trade to the Panthers, possible trade to the Seahawks, possible stick with Baker Mayfield. We talked about it last week. It's going to be a topic until something happens, and something's got to happen. And you know what? I mentioned bad news dump. Today could be the day that the NFL makes known its proposed punishment of Deshaun Watson that activates this three-step process. The league proposes a punishment, disciplinary officer takes it from there, issues a decision, and then the commissioner has jurisdiction over the appeal. That's going to take time. Maybe that gets started today. But once we know what the league wants to do with Deshaun Watson, that's another data point as the Browns try to figure out what they're going to do with Baker Mayfield. I'm surprised Mayfield's been quiet about it. At some point, I think he's going to not be quiet. But, Peter, that $18.8 million fully guaranteed, he's making it one way or the other, and the Browns are stringing this out as long as they have to get whatever value they think they can get for him.
You know, what makes sense to me now, and I've talked about it a few times, Mike, but I mean, obviously, for the Browns to get anybody to take Baker Mayfield off their hands, they are going to have to pay a good chunk of the contract. But to me, what makes the most sense is they just tell Baker Mayfield to stay away for the time being and wait until they get an offer from a team. And I'm not saying there's going to be a Sam Bradford situation where, there's an injury in Minnesota to Teddy Bridgewater late in training camp, a week before the season, and they trade for Sam Bradford. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is things happen that you can't really predict right now. And again, I'm not saying that somebody absolutely is going to get hurt, but if I were the Browns, I'd be waiting, even if I had to wait a long time, and wait until Baker Mayfield can actually be of use to somebody so that the Browns don't have to pay ransom to him.
I agree with that approach completely. The question is, does Baker Mayfield go along with it? Does he stay away? Or does he say, no, you got to deal with me. I'm here. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to practice. And I expect to be treated like anybody else who's on the team. And you got to decide what you're going to do about that. And I don't know that that's good for anybody. And Mayfield, I think it's important now that he comes off as being a guy who is compliant and a guy who will get along and go along. And you got to be thinking about 2023. You got to be thinking about your next team after this season ends. But that's all the more reason for Mayfield to say, I'd like to get to somewhere where I can lay the foundation to have the kind of a season that will make me attractive in 2023. But Peter, I still think that his best option, if the Brown, and we don't know how long Deshaun Watson is going to miss. He may not miss one game at all. He could miss the whole season. I won't be surprised if they suspend him the whole season after what MLB did to Trevor Bauer. But once the Browns know, if they know they're not going to be without Deshaun Watson for an extended stretch of the season, if that's how this goes, if I'm Baker Mayfield, I say, well, Carolina, Seattle, Cleveland. I know I'm pissed at the Browns, but if I'm thinking about setting myself up in the best possible position I can for 2023, probably better off staying in Cleveland. I just don't know that he can walk that back at this point. I don't think
that's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons, Mike, that when the Deebo Samuel thing blew up a month ago, that's one of the reasons why you saw the approach that John Lynch took. And his approach was, out of sight, out of mind. Let's just forget this for the next 2 months. Let's say nice things about Deebo Samuel. Let's give him his space, and let's not engage and make this any worse than it is. And you've noticed with the Cleveland Browns, they haven't really said anything or fired back at Baker Mayfield. And one of the reasons is it can't help them to do that. And you are absolutely right the best thing that can happen after, let's say, 6 more weeks of nothing, the best thing that could happen when everybody has taken multiple deep breaths, the best thing that can happen is for Baker Mayfield to pick up the phone and call Kevin Stefanski and said, now that you're going to be missing your quarterback for whatever, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, do we want to try to rebuild this bridge? And I will come in and be a good soldier under one condition, that you don't, that I become totally free at the end of this season, which obviously the Browns would be amenable to do, because they're certainly not going to employ him after 2022. So to me, that is the smartest way of doing it. Just do nothing for the next 6 weeks, and then just see where you are, and then see if Baker Mayfield, and I don't mean to put him down or anything, but see if he's smart enough to know that his best option is in Cleveland.
Yeah, it's just going to take some work. We talked about the report from ESPN.com. It was now 3 weeks ago, where if some of those concerns trace back to Mayfield's camp, and I believe they do, it's going to be hard to rebuild that bridge, but it may be the best solution for everyone. The first step, though, is what will the league do about Deshaun Watson? And I think that answer could come as soon as 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern today, because this is a great opportunity. Even though the news cycle never shuts down, as we previously discussed, especially as it relates to the NFL, there is something to be said for finding a way to drop something as we go into a 3-day break before all of the shows are back on and the people are cranking up their opinions, and you give it some time and some space, and it's not as big of an eruption as it would be if it happened on a Monday or a Tuesday during a normal week. And as to the Panthers, to bring it back to the original point, as to the Panthers, even though they drafted Matt Corral in round 3 and they have Sam Darnold, listen to Scott Fitterer, the GM of the team, from a recent appearance on PFTPM regarding whether or not they would still consider possibly adding, wink, wink, nod, nod, a veteran quarterback from another team. The drafting of Matt Corral came after it was well reported and documented there were trade discussions involving the Panthers and another team regarding a player who is under contract with that other team. And I'm not trying to lead you into a tampering trap, so I'll just ask you a very, very simple question. Is there any possibility that you will trade for a veteran quarterback? No names. Is there any possibility you'll trade at this point moving forward for a veteran quarterback on another team?
I would say quarterback or any other position. If there's someone out there that we think can help us, we'll keep our minds open. We have the money set aside for to make several different moves, and that was important for us to do. We want that flexibility. But if someone can help us, regardless of position, we'll make a move at some point.
Now, look, that's a non-answer, but he also could have said we're fine with the quarterbacks we have. Could have said that. Could have said we're fine with Sam Darnold and Matt Corral. We drafted Matt Corral. We got 2 guys that we think we can go forward with, but he didn't say that. And so there's still a thought that the logjam could break and Baker Mayfield could end up in Carolina. I don't have any lean. I'm just surprised the Seahawks haven't shown more interest. I feel like they're playing poker with the Browns, and they're just sitting there with their best poker face on, waiting for the best possible opportunity to get Mayfield under the best possible terms for the Seahawks.
Here's the thing that I take from that. There was one little part of his answer, basically where he said, we have the money to do whatever we want to do. That, to me, is a signal if there is any interest. He could just be spouting we can do whatever we want, blah, blah, blah. But that, to me, is a signal, if there was one sent in there to the Cleveland Browns, to basically say, make us a better offer, and we'll consider it. And that, to me, is exactly where the Carolina Panthers are right now. I think they would be fine with going into training camp without Baker Mayfield. I think if they could get him at a Walmart price, that they'd bring him in. The Seahawks that's a little bit of a different story. I'm not saying it's impossible. Pete Carroll is Mr. Everybody's got to compete every day and all that. So I'm not saying it's impossible. But what I am saying is, he's just a different quarter. I think what they want is they want a quarterback for a ground control, ball possession, ground offense, that is the way they really would like to play going forward. And not a let Geno cook kind of, or let Drew Lock cook kind of offense. So it's a little bit square peg in a round hole bringing Baker Mayfield in.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.